you're interested in the things that we have to say, we want you to follow up with your Camcor rep and get a meeting with our team. There is no charge to engage with our team. It is a service that Poly, which is now part of HP, so HP Poly provides this service, and we definitely want to have a consultative meeting with you, even if you might not feel eligible for this particular grant, and you might be surprised. You may be, if you even if you don't think you are, but there may be other funding opportunities. So that's the big takeaway. We want you to meet with us and your Camcor rep sometime in the coming days and weeks. So what you see on this slide is a little bit about the Poly Grant Assistance Program. You see my picture as well as Kimberly Newman. We are the channel grant managers, and we stay at the high level and just go out there and talk to channel partners and keep Camcor informed about the funding mechanisms out there that may support technology spends for you, the customer. So we help you find the funding. We help figure out which are the best fit for your organization. We pre-qualify you as the customer for funding opportunities. That is really valuable. We know you don't have time to waste on, putting in grant applications that you're not going to win. So we really help fine tune that, and I think that is something that is so valuable to you. Macy Kate and Peter and their colleagues as regional grant managers are really, really experts at that. Then they handhold you through the whole application process and provide post-award support when that is required. And again, this is a free service. We're just looking for HP Poly equipment to be a part of your budget, and we will help you with that process. And I'm going to tell you, it's invaluable. I can say that because I stay up here and talk at a different level, but Macy, Kate, and Peter and their colleagues really do walk you through the entire process. And it's just amazing what they can help you do and fine tune to be competitive. You can always reach us at grants@hp.com, but again, we always encourage you to work through your Camcor rep. So at a glance, this is our Poly Grant Association, Poly Grant Assistance Program team members. On the east, we have Shannon and Macy Kate, and on the west, we have Peter and Elizabeth. So you're going to hear more from Peter and Macy Kate in a few minutes about the details of this grant. All right, let's talk a little bit about this RUS-DLT. Rodney already mentioned it's the USDA puts out this grant, which is kind of interesting already. But the grant has been around since 1994. So a lot of people in the whole world just caught on to distance learning and telemedicine as a result of the pandemic. I've been in the industry quite a while. We never really realized it was going to take a pandemic for the whole world to catch on to this thing called interactive video. But I tell you, it's really powerful. And now everybody does understand it. And there's still a real need in rural areas to use distance learning and telemedicine to get all the same kind of services that you can find in urban areas. And interactive real-time distance learning and telemedicine has been doing that since, the early 90s. And the USDA still has this fantastic grant funding those opportunities. So for the USDA, they consider rural a population of 20,000 or less to be eligible to even apply. But we're going to tell you again, helping you understand how to be competitive, that if your city or town is less than 5,000 people, or maybe 5 to 10,000, it depends exactly where you are, that's going to really mean that you're competitive. Those towns up at the 20,000 mark are rarely competitive just like that. And then it does need to be coupled with economic need. So grant funding often does follow problems and often goes to the underserved communities. So in this case, we're looking at low population and high economic need. What is really interesting about this grant is almost any entity is eligible to apply. I know we have a great deal of educators on the phone and on this call, and that is a sweet spot, obviously, for distance learning and maybe even for telemedicine in your schools. But for this grant, other organizations, even for-profit organizations, can apply for this. So the only exceptions are federal organizations, sole proprietors, and organizations in the coastal barrier zones. And I know you do have coastal barrier zones in North Carolina, so we do have to be aware of that. But anyway, this is a very, very consistent and reliable source of funding. It's been coming out every year. And the good news for you is since 1994, we have had members on our team working on this grant. We know how to be successful. We can be strategic and sometimes really help you get your scoring better, because there is an objective score and then there's the subjective part of the grant. The objective part of the grant is telling your story and how this is going to make an impact on your organization and your community. But the objective score is where we can really help you understand if you're eligible and maybe make you more competitive. Well, we expect this grant to come out soon, and I'm going to let Peter talk about that and more of the details. But it's been a pleasure to be with you. Now, make sure you put your questions in the Q&A. I'm going to go on mute, and I might pop off if we have some good questions to ask.
Jennifer, this is Rodney with Camcor. Can you go into, it can also be supporting the rural areas. It doesn't necessarily mean
Absolutely.
located in a rural area. I want to make that clear for everyone on the
I'm
call.
so glad. Well, you're really making a good point, Rodney, because I don't want anybody to hang up. Don't leave the call because Macy, Kate, and Peter are really going to go into that, what some of these projects look like. And often it is a hub and spoke. I'll give a spoiler right there, where maybe a more urban entity or location is supporting programs in rural entities. So please, if you feel like you're in a populous area, don't hang up. And also you might hear, some other interesting, get some big ideas. That is a great thing about our team is we help you get some really big ideas. Thanks, Rodney. Thanks for that.
Definitely. Thank you guys. And thank you for asking that question, Rodney. I'm Peter. I'm just going to go through a little bit of the details and the brass tacks of the grant. So it is a maximum award of $1 million that the government will be willing to offer you. And the lower end of that is 50,000. So you want to build a project that's at least 50,000, but generally we find that that's pretty easy to do. This grant can cover a bunch of different things that I'll get into in a moment, but on the big level, it can cover the hardware, the software, and all the services, as well as the install for all of this equipment that we're going to be talking about. And so you can see how it's, even for a small school, we generally don't worry about that lower award end. So there is a cost match. There's a 15% match that all of the organizations who are going to be receiving technology have to agree to and sign off on. And the only restriction with that is that you can't use federal dollars to pay for that 15% of the entire project. That doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to kind of like fund that 15%, right? We can work with you on strategies for spreading that 15% out over the 3-year course of the project, and just making that as easy as possible. The project period is 3 years, and the way this grant works overall is that it's a reimbursement style grant. So that kind of helps with that 15% cost share or match as well, because you don't, let's say you have a project of roughly $1 million, and then you have a cost share of roughly $150,000. You don't have to come up with that $150,000 all at once. You can just buy equipment, be reimbursed for it, spend that same money again, buy more equipment, be reimbursed for it. So you don't actually have to have all of this cash on hand as an organization, because that's what they're looking for with this grant. They're looking to help folks who don't have a lot of money already as organizations and build those distance learning and telemedicine projects. As Jennifer said, we're expecting that this grant could open up as early as December 1st. Could be a little bit later, but I think we all want to be prepared for the earliest possible opening for this grant. And then once it does open, once the USDA sends out these emails and opens up the grant, we'll have a 60-day window to get through all the portals and create all of the narratives and plug everything that we've been working on for months into the final portals on the government websites, and then press that final submission button. And so, yeah, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Awesome. So there are a couple different types of projects. I'm going to just sort of focus on education-based projects, because I know that's what most of you all today work in, and that's the sort of primary field that we're going to talk about. So school to school, and by that we kind of mean K through 12 organization to K through 12, or even district to district on a slightly larger level. But we see these types of projects a lot. Generally, it's pretty rural K through 12 organizations with other pretty rural K through 12 organizations, And this grant allows them to buy technology so that they can share a bunch of these essential resources like teachers and courses and often even like nurses, right? We can use this grant to pay for a telemedicine cart that allows multiple districts to sort of have a single or maybe two nurses on call, so that they don't have to be, running around, traveling in a triangle that's 30 minutes on each side every day of the week. Um, we also see a lot of school to health center projects. And so the health center can send information and programming and care really to K through 12 through the technology provided by this grant, which can cover substance abuse programming, wellness programming, which really can mean a lot of different things as long as it falls under the very general category or umbrella of telehealth, mental health training and care. All this stuff is open. We also see I'd say one of the biggest types of projects that we see would be higher ed projects that pair with K through 12. And we'll get into this a little bit more later, but just as Jennifer was saying earlier, you might be a higher ed institution that's in an area of over 20,000 people, or what you might consider to be an urban area. And you might be thinking, oh, this project isn't for me, this is for rural places. But this might be a great example of a time that you could build a project where you're in an urban area as, say, a community college, say in a town of 50,000 people, and all of those folks at the districts around you who are in really, really small towns, all those little K through 12 organizations, and you might even know them through dual enrollment or enrichment programs. And this grant can massively upgrade the capabilities of those dual enrollment programs, because it can give technology to both the hub, which would be that community college or university, and it can give a bunch of distance learning technology to all of those satellite sites that are in rural places. So that's a really, really powerful use case that we really want to highlight. We also see higher ed pairing with other higher ed. Sometimes this looks like community colleges with satellite sites that'll have like one central site, and then we'll also have a bunch of different smaller areas that reach further out into rural America. But we also see that between similarly rural community colleges or other types of universities. Yeah. And also like technical schools and stuff like that. And it's not just traditional community colleges, or a lot of these programs are also like advancement schools, or specialized types of schools. It doesn't have to be sort of a traditional aspect. Yeah, could you go to the next slide, please? Awesome. And so I guess what can you really buy with this grant? And that's a really important and exciting question when you really get down to it. So I would say that there are a lot of things that you can end up paying for directly with this grant. But the things that we find people are really, really excited about and are always needing are interactive panels for the front of their classrooms, and laptops. And then we also see that people are really, really interested in taking those smaller pieces and building larger virtual classrooms, right? And that's all it really takes to build a movable virtual classroom that you can have on a large cart and move around your school, and basically take that piece of equipment and turn any room in your school into a virtual classroom that helps your use case for this grant and is also just a really useful piece of technology that you can use to teach every single day. This can also pay for laptops, end user devices for kids so they can learn when they can't be in the classroom, as long as it's that live synchronous video learning, just like the type of thing that we're doing right now. Like you can ask me a question in the chat and I'm talking to you live. And so that's what we're sort of talking about. So any of those kind of use cases are great. It can also pay for software platforms, training, and maintenance. And it doesn't just have to be used by the kids only. We often see professional development spaces People will upgrade conference rooms so that they can link multiple districts and not have to have folks who are doing professional development and training have to drive all around in order to fill their requirements. Yeah. Next slide, please. Awesome. And so here are just a couple of success stories that we've seen in the past couple of years. As you can see, we really kind of we work all over the country and help a lot of different types of folks get this kind of stuff. But interactive panels, video conference systems, and dual panel conference rooms that's kind of like that virtual classroom side of the grant, which is a really important use case for the grant. We've also seen people upgrade auditoriums with this grant, and we might be able to do what we're doing right now, except I would just be standing on a stage with a video camera that would be allowing me to stand up and gesticulate and what have you, and give more effective presentation, just because by nature of the space. And so we've also seen people be able to redo parts of their auditoriums and get a lot of technology that allows for that kind of upgrade. Codec systems, interactive panels, tablets, and then of course all the licensing can be included in this grant. So whatever your service provider is, whether Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Meet, whatever, it can pay for that for the 3-year period of that grant. Yeah, thank you. Next slide. And I think I'll hand it over to Macy Kate to talk a little bit about scoring and eligibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say thank you for having me. I'm Macy Kate, and this is exciting stuff to talk about every time. I was saying on this slide for a second, because I feel like every time we get together as a team, we talk about a different state and a different success story. And I think that's always so impactful to see just how each district or how each organization is using this to meet their needs. And so we gave some project examples, but we always say this is a really great time to dream big. I say if you wish you had a way to make people be in more than one place at one time, or if you wish you had, 15 more of some kind of staff member, then this is the grant for you, because it's that live video conferencing piece that puts this whole grant into action. So those things that Peter talked about, the interactive panels and the computers, those are things that supplement that live video conferencing technology that's doing that authentic and engaging learning experience. So we have in our minds a little bit that distance learning feel that we all had to get into during COVID, like Jennifer spoke about, but the technology that's out today is so much more than that. It allows teachers to be able to teach how they've always taught. To Peter's point, they're not just standing there, they're able to walk around the room, they're able to teach like they're used to teaching and in an engaging way, and the end users are able to see that. The cameras are automatically following them, the teacher's not having to do anything different, and the students are able to feel just like they were in that classroom with them. They're able to interact with their peers, have a sense of belonging. So the technology is just a really, really cool way to make those resources expand. We hear a lot about specialists that are not there's not enough of them. We don't have enough speech therapists. We don't have enough behavioral specialists. And then they can't have these IEP meetings, and the students can't get the services that they need. And so to Peter's point, upgrading those conference rooms and allowing for more than one person to be at a table, and somebody else might be 30 minutes away at a different school serving a different student, but they're still able to make that meeting and create that plan with the parents and make sure that things are happening. I wanted to talk a little bit about scoring and kind of that hub and spoke model, like Peter and Jennifer mentioned. So again, a dream big grant. So we talked a little bit about school to school, higher ed to K-12, medical systems to higher ed, all kinds of different things. But really, like Jennifer said, anyone can apply with this, and you can partner up with whoever you want to. And as long as one site is receiving equipment, they are able to be included in your project. So you might be one of those more urban areas, but you might be serving a community center. You might be doing adult ed in a community center. You might be doing dual enrollment in a high school. You might be doing healthcare education in a mental health facility in a community. And all those rural places could be included as your sites, and your higher ed institution would be what's called the hub. So any of you that are in a more populated area, those sites, and that's where our team comes in, would be what's considered a hub. And we look at the scoring, we look at the physical addresses, and we see how can we make your application as competitive as possible. So what do we need to classify that physical site as to make sure you're getting as many points as you can. So I'm going to show you a little bit what that looks like, but just high level, could kind of bullet point what we've talked about. Scoring is based on economic need, population, rurality, and your need for services. So those are the 4 categories that make up your scoring. The key measurement factors are going to be the SAPE score. That's your small area income and poverty estimate. So that is a federal government score that's given. And then it's going to be the population, which this year is going to be based off the 2020 census. And then we're looking at the USDA maps. There's a lot of different maps out there, but this is a grant funded by the USDA. And so they have their rural development maps that we look at. So we do meet with people who sometimes say, well, we're rural or we're really underserved, and you may be, but we and our team will really look at the guidance that this particular grant is looking at. So we work on grants all day, every day, and different grants have different requirements. So we know y'all are wearing a million different hats, and that's kind of the name of the game in education. And so we always say, hey, Camcor has a relationship with us. Why not let us do that work for you? Because that is our sole job. So one of the things we would do when we get on a call with you is dig a little bit deeper into your organization specifically. So thinking about and talking about what your needs are. What are you looking to do? Do you have a need to expand the courses that you're teaching from one college to another satellite campus? Do you have a need to connect one high school with another high school because you only have one calculus teacher and one foreign language teacher, and that one's not willing to travel somewhere else? Or maybe a neighboring district has those schools teachers and you have some teachers and y'all all need to share and collaborate. And so we see those things all of the time. So we like to get on those calls with you guys, have those conversations, and really help build your story. We can mention a few that we see often, but that doesn't mean that's the end all be all. We really want to help cater it to meet your needs. So scoring is made up of 2 parts, objective scoring and subjective scoring. And this sheet that you see right here, and I know it's a little bit small for you guys to see, but we'll send these slides over like Jen said. This is your objective score. This is where we can really look at the physical site addresses and see what's the economic need in those areas, what's the population of those areas, and should we consider them a hub, an end user, or a hub and an end user. And we can really kind of adapt that score to make you be as competitive as possible. And remember, even if you're a hub, so even if you are that urban area, you're still receiving equipment, you're still getting that 15% match. I'm from Alabama, and we have somebody who says it's like having an 85% off coupon. And I think that's a great way to put it. You're still able to get the equipment for the discount. Everybody wins here. You're just expanding the reach that you have. So here we have an example of a high school, and they're all in a college prep school. There's 3 high schools and a board of ed that are all in a more urban area. So we said, we're going to consider them hubs. That means that their score does not negatively affect the average. And then where you have all these other schools who need to share different things. And so we say they're going to be a hub end user. There's going to be times that they're sharing content. There's going to be times they're receiving content. I say those terms loosely. We say receiving and sending. We know we're on it right now that video conferencing does what it does. There is no like meters on the back of these devices saying who's sending, who's receiving. But for purposes of the grant, we want to talk about what are the haves and have-nots. What do these hub sites have that they can then be sharing with these other sites that don't have them? So we take the physical addresses, and I'm not going to get too much in the weeds to this because this is why we want to have a call with you guys so that we can do this with information that pertains to you. And then we take that SAPE score, which is based on the county that the physical site is in. And we also are going to look at the population, and that's what determines the rurality score. So then we take your rurality average and your SAPE, that economic need average, we average them together to get at least up to 70 points. 70 points is the max. And then there's always special consideration every year. Sometimes that's 10 points, sometimes that's 20 points. And we always encourage to get those extra points because who doesn't love bonus points? We're all in education. So we know that that's important. If they can fall in line with what you're needing to do, we always say, let's try to claim those points. And we kind of get creative with you to figure out if that's something you should do or not. So that objective score is worth 70 points of your overall score. So if we can get your objective score where we feel like is in a competitive position, then we say absolutely you should apply for it, because that subjective piece, that's where you tell your needs and benefits. It's only 30 points. It's only 30%. And a lot of times your story is just plain Jane to you, but when you're telling your story to us, we hear the passion for what you're talking about. We hear the needs that you have. And to give an example, I had a district one time who was telling me that sometimes their kids couldn't make it to the first period dual enrollment class because they had to be out in the farm, and some of them were milking the cows and some of them were, putting the tractors back in the shed or whatever the case may be, but they couldn't always get there in time because maybe those dual enrollment classes started 30 minutes prior to whatever the traditional school day was. And I stopped him and I said, that right there is something that you're speaking to that you think is, traditional everyday life for all of America. And it's very much not. And so I was able to say, hey, let's put that as the headliner of your story. Let's tell your story. And we're able to really get those 30 subjective points because we're able to tailor that story and tell them, why do you need this? Who's going to benefit from this? How is it going to affect your community? So we really feel if we have your objective score in a position that looks favorable, then we can absolutely get your subjective score to where it needs to be. However, I don't want this to be intimidating. Your LDA grant manager, me and Peter and Elizabeth and Shannon on our team, we're the ones that will do this data pulling for you. We're going to analyze it. We're going to look at your reality. We're not going to ask you what your SAPE score is because you probably don't know. We already have that information handy, and we'll pop it in and we'll say, hey, you're in a great position on your own, or we'll say, hey, let's look at some rural areas around you. What could you do to expand your footprint? Where could you fill in those gaps? And we'll help you with that process. So would love to be able to do that little analysis for you on your organization and see what we can do to make you as competitive as possible. Special consideration points, just to harp on that, we don't know what those are ever until the application actually comes out. Those have been things like STEM, opioid and substance abuse addiction and trainings, tribal lands. I'm trying to think of some other ones, cybersecurity. There's been a lot of different ones. And so if you can make the special considerations for that application period apply, then we always try to get those, to get your application even more competitive than we're already going to aim for it to be. So next steps is just absolutely connect with your Camcor rep, or they will connect with you after this call, and let's get a meeting together. Let's dive a little bit deeper into your specific institution, what your needs are and your scoring, and see how can we get the ball rolling? Because if we don't feel like you're in a competitive position, we might say, hey, let's work on some of these partnerships. And that might take a little bit of time. Or if we do feel like you're great and ready to go, then we can say, let's move on to those next steps. Let's determine the needs for your project. Be doing a walkthrough with your Camcor representative. See what it is that you need to make this project happen. And then again, just dream big. This is not a grant where they're going to come to you and say, you said you were going to teach Spanish 3 and now you're not teaching Spanish 3. Or maybe you've said for years we've wanted to do a literacy program and we've wanted to share librarians and we've never been able to make that happen. And we would like to use this equipment to try and make that happen. That's the cool thing about it. It is a visionary grant. And a lot of grants, if you're in the education world, are programmatic mostly, meaning they're like a piece of puzzle. There's a lot of different areas within a grant, and equipment is normally one small piece of that puzzle. But this grant is our favorite, and we always say in education, we're not supposed to have favorites, but sometimes we can't help it. And this one is all equipment. So $1 million worth of equipment for a fraction of the cost is normally a no-brainer for educators when funds and resources are already so limited. So when you're just thinking back to all the problems that we're facing in education today, lack of resources, limited support, teacher burnout, mental health, behavioral health, school safety and security, all of those things, there's a grant for, and we would love to be able to help. So absolutely, let's have a meeting to dive deeper into your organization. And then there's things we can do now, like Peter mentioned, we're anticipating a January release date, but there's only 60 days from the time that the application is released until the time it's submitted. And there's a lot of little T's and I's that we have to cross and dot, and we want to make sure that you're ready to do that. So we can make sure you have active registrations, that you have community buy-in, stakeholder support. So whether that has to be board approval or presidential approval, we want to make sure that those ducks are in a row so that we can hit the ground running when that application comes out. So we would love to help. We have bombarded you guys with a lot of information, and we would love for y'all to ask some questions and let us help you. So I'm going to stop talking, and I don't know if there's been anything in the chat, but we would love for you guys to just unmute. We're an informal group, or you can put your questions in there and we're happy to help.
I agree. I bet you can tell Macy Kate was a former educator. Both you and Peter did a great job explaining this grant. There aren't any questions yet, but we would love to hear from you, whether if you want to speak up, if you're able to do that, or just pop something in the chat. But again, lots of information in a short period of time. But don't you want to get your hands on $1 million, right? So best way to figure out if you qualify for this or maybe other funding is to get with your Camcor rep, follow up, and let us pre-score you, and let's have a meeting and talk about your challenges and how we might overcome them and your eligibility for this funding and other funding. Carrie or Rodney, you have anything to add? I still don't see any questions there.
Yeah, I was going to chime in. From our perspective, I had a couple meetings with you guys last year, and Jennifer, I think you were on the one that I was a part of. It was excellent. I think the big thing is what Rodney mentioned, already, is even if you're supporting a rural community, you can still qualify. A lot of people think that they're too urban, too many people, and you can't. But like, I think the instance we were talking about was they were going to support fire departments. Was that right, Jennifer? I think.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. I
And
remember
so
that.
basically, they were going to have teachers at their main hub, and then like local volunteer fire departments they were going to support. And they were getting, like panels on carts and microphones and all that fun stuff. So it's all about what they said, being creative and thinking outside the box. Absolutely.
Thank
And I
you
will
for that.
say,
Yeah.
we say a lot, technology does what it does. Technology can kill a lot of birds with one stone. So you may have a need, and then in thinking about the grant, you might think, oh, we actually could do this, this, and this. And for purposes of the grant, you're going to do that, those things because that meets those needs, but that doesn't mean that that's all you can do. Technology is multifold, and so you can really expand your reach and do a lot of cool things. You bringing up the fire departments, Carrie, reminds me a lot of higher eds have partnerships with correctional facilities. And so thinking about that, if you need to have, upgrades to your lecture halls or to big spaces at your higher ed institution, you can put equipment there, but then you also put some equipment in those correctional facilities or in those more rural correction places that might be doing GED courses for inmates or post incarceration support at the mental health offices. There's a lot of different things that you can do to really get that equipment, but also impact your community. So I think it's a win-win. I tell people it's like a way that you are selfish, but also so giving at the same time, because you're able to get what you need. And you're also able really to help so many other people in the process by partnering with some other folks who really need it.
Absolutely. And just for everybody on the webinar, I'm going to put just our general info line if you're not sure who your rep is. So be sure to just contact that, and we can get you to your Camcor rep, which can then get you in touch with these guys. So feel free to, we have several people that respond to that email address. So don't feel like it's going in a black hole.
I love that. I saw it. Info@camcor.com, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. That's fantastic. And somebody asked if we're going to be sending the slides. So yes, we are recording, and we will send the recording along with the slide deck so that you can review this information. But again, please don't try to figure out your own score. There's no reason to do that. Let us do that for you. You'll be glad that you let us do that for you.
And I will say a lot of times people don't know what they don't know, and we don't know what we're missing out on until we see it and realize how impactful it can be. And so Camcor does such a great job, we know, of having boots on the ground and being entrenched in their territories, and so does Poly and HP, and they are willing and ready and able to kind of come to you and show you that equipment. We also have experience centers where we have educators who know what the hurdles are and can kind of show them to you virtually too, if you don't have time or the means to have somebody come out to you. Those are really, really neat to actually see the equipment in action. And a lot of times that just ignites even more ideas that you could get, going with $1 million. So we tell people, if you had $1 million and you could solve a problem, what would it be? And then most of the time, the technology that HP and Poly offer can solve that problem.
Well, excellent. I think think we've answered all the questions. But again, we appreciate you guys so much for taking the time with us. And anybody that thinks of questions after the fact, get in touch with us and we'll talk it through.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much for the opportunity. So great to meet everybody. And we'll follow up with resources and we'll look forward to seeing you on a meeting. Again, engaging us with us is free of charge. Poly is a part of HP. Mr. Alcorn has asked that question. So yes, that's it's been a year now, but still making its way out there, that Poly is a part of HP now. So the Poly Grant Assistance Program is a part of HP. And this is a service that HP Poly contracts for Camcor and their customers, and we're happy to help you free of charge. So why not have that meeting, see if you qualify for the $1 million, and we really look forward to meeting with you and helping you all. All right, thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks
Awesome.
for having us, guys. Y'all have a great
Absolutely.
week.
Take care now.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
you
You
too.
too. Bye-bye.